Hello everybody and welcome back to AquaTalk. Today we are speaking with Katie Crysdale, who is the owner and founder of Lakeview Aquatics Consultants and has 18 years of industry experience. Today we speak about everything from management, experience, tips and tricks, to certified pool operators and looking at a pump room and knowing what you're doing, to mentorship, to water safety and drowning prevention. It is an understatement to say that everything we deal with in the aquatics industry has been talked about in this podcast. It is so inspiring, this episode. And Katie is just a wonderful human being, and I am so excited for you guys to listen to this episode, and I really hope you listen all the way through because it is a long one. It's about an hour and a half because I just couldn't stop asking her questions because she has so much knowledge and she is so inspiring. So without further ado, let's get started. Hello everybody, welcome back to AquaTalk. Today we have Katie Crysdale on from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. How are you, Katie?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. I just showed up at your door. It's minus 20 degrees out this morning. And I sent this lady I've never met before a text saying, you know what, it's too cold. I'm coming to your house early. So only lifeguards would understand that this is completely acceptable behavior.
Oh yeah, totally. I was like, yep, okay, gotta get out of my bed now. For those of you who don't know, it's like 8 in the morning, but she got here at like, what, 7:50? About
more
that.
Like 7:40.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we were supposed to meet at 8:30 and it was too cold and I just, you know what, we'll make it work.
It's all good. So I'm really excited to have you on. I found you on Facebook a couple months ago, and we've kind of been like within the same realm. Like, you've been listening to my podcast, I've been watching your posts, and like I love everything you do and I'm so interested. So why don't you tell our listeners what you do and why you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the owner-operator of Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. And what that means is that I've taken my passion for aquatics and swimming and water safety, and I found my own niche for how I can help a variety of different clients. So my background is very similar to yours, Paige. I started as a lifeguard. I did outdoor camps, waterfront for several years. I did lifeguarding during my undergraduate schooling, and then I continued on in that career for many years, finishing as a municipal facility manager, like an aquatics manager. And I was always continuing to teach leadership on the side. Right. So lifeguarding instructor courses, first aid courses, swimming instructor courses, all of those courses I continued to do on the side of my regular job because I love teaching. I missed dealing with the kids. I missed dealing with the staff. So fast forward, when my day job as an aquatic manager reached a point where it wasn't going to keep working for me, I thought, well, it's either now or never. I'm going to make the leap to full time. And so what Lakeview Aquatic Consultants does now is I do continue to deliver leadership, right, as well as the certified pool operator course. But then I'm also able to meet with different clients, whether it's consulting clients for facilities, mentoring clients for guards, making that transition to maybe their first management role or a more senior role, and really provide that support and help them grow themselves, grow their facilities in whatever way that looks like. Right. So it could be looking at the programming, what's working for programming, what's not. Looking at the facility, maybe we're considering a renovation. Maybe right. we're, there's so many things we do in aquatics, and I really love that my business with Lakeview, we're able to do a little bit of everything. We're not stuck in just doing one course or one type of work, because really, as lifeguards or instructors or managers, I mean, we're so diverse in our skill set. Why would I pigeonhole myself and say, oh, I'm just going to write reports or I'm just going to write procedures?
Right. Awesome. That's so interesting. So how many years were you an aquatics manager? What changed that thing in your brain being like, you know what, I could do more?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a great question. And I feel like I'm getting older now because I'm able to kind of have an answer. And in the past where we were all just winging it, now as people, especially, younger guards would look up to me and say, okay, how do I get where you are? And I say, I have no idea how I got here, but that's not going to be a helpful solution. I've had my NL. I've been a lifeguard for 18 years and I've guarded for 18 years. Mm-hmm. As an aquatic manager, I moved out to Alberta from Ontario, coming up on 8 years this summer. So I was an aquatic facility manager for 7 years. Wow. Previous to that, I was a shift supervisor. So at a larger facility where there's a level of shift or deck supervisors below the managers, I did that for 4 years. So basically for me, I love aquatics, but I reached a point where I was high enough up in the totem pole that I was doing payroll, I was doing performance management, I was doing a lot of meetings and a lot of emails about meetings and a lot of I was off the deck, I was disconnected from the clients, I was disconnected from the guards, I was disconnected from that sound of water that drives so many of us. Right. And so it started initially, I needed some extra money and I thought, okay, well, I'll start teaching leadership again around my day job. And it just was so life-giving to be back interacting in those situations that we love, right? Teaching those kids how to perform their first rescue using the ladder approach when they're 13 and their eyes kind of open to these possibilities, right? Or mentoring those new instructors who are teaching a parent and taught and they're absolutely terrified. What am I going to do with babies for 30 minutes? So I just realized I needed to make a change. And so I built my clients on the side. I moonlighted at a lot of different facilities for leadership, and I started to build a network of just contacts, people staying in touch with old staff, staying in touch with facilities, staying in touch with anytime I go to a town that I'm visiting, whether it's Ottawa to see my family, or I'm based in Alberta now, maybe to Edmonton for an event, dropping in and seeing what's new at a facility, what's going on. And I really started to notice that people appreciated these conversations that we were having. Like maybe I'd stop for 20 minutes and, how's the reno going? What's new? Right. And it wasn't any sort of financial or business transaction. It was just, I genuinely care. I genuinely want to see how your renovation went. Yeah. I genuinely want to hear that somebody was involved in the renovation who ordered something that you didn't want, and now you're trying to figure out how to buy the thing that you actually need because the dry people in management didn't necessarily understand what the aquatics people needed, right? And so then how can we avoid hitting our head against a wall and having that same experience at a facility down the road, right? Can we connect people and say, well, this person in this town is doing this renovation, they experience these challenges, how can this other facility avoid those pitfalls? So I guess just to cycle back to your original question, I just noticed there was a gap, and my husband was the one who'd said, well, why don't you just start your own business? And I was a bit lazy, and I said, well, I have a full-time job. Why would I want to make a website, get a logo? Like, it's a lot of work. It's nice to just show up and teach or just show up and do things. Right. And he'd said, well, but nobody's doing what you do, so you should start a business. And I thought about it for a little bit, and then I'm a deep thinker, and then once I've made a decision, then I just do it. So after the couple months of deep thinking, then I just sort of, okay, I'll do this and see where it goes.
Cool. I am totally the opposite of you. Man, I think about things for maybe a week, but through it, I've already convinced myself what I'm gonna do.
Well, it's interesting because I've been doing a lot of reading the last 2 years. There's something called sensory processing sensitivity, or highly sensitive person. And it's a personality type that is not saying that, we're extra emotional and we cry, or it's just saying that we as people personalities, we process information differently and we think about it for a really long time and we consider all the possible causes and effects and consequences. And then once we've done all that work, then we come to the best possible decision. Right. And I read a book last year about the highly sensitive person. And once I read this book, it was interesting to be able to say, okay, it's both my aquatics background, and we train in in-service and we practice scenarios and we
Right.
plan for every possible thing that could go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to work and things that we didn't even plan for go wrong and we have to make it work. And then also saying, well, it's also a personality trait that I have that I can perhaps see more in body language or see what's unspoken in a meeting, or just like I'm cueing off of things that other people don't see. And so rather than think that that's a weird thing, that's an asset that I can offer my clients. 100%. And that's an asset to me in the industry.
Yeah.
When maybe other people are missing the cues that are out there.
That's so interesting. What's the name of that book?
So it's called The Highly Sensitive Person. And the author, I believe, is Dr. Aaron Beller. Dr. Aaron, for sure, Aron. But if you Google The Highly Sensitive Person, she was the first person to really research, I believe she has a PhD in psychology. She was the first person to really research and identify what are the personality traits, and then the whole book goes through how does it impact your work, how does it impact your family life, how does it impact your romantic relationships, how does it impact your, different areas of the work.
That is so interesting.
Mm-hmm. And
good to know.
She estimates that 30% of the population is some percentage of sensory processing sensitivity. And so some people would be more extreme, some people would be less extreme, but that basically...
I would be interested to read that book, but also have a test online. Those 16 personalities or the 5
Correct.
love languages. I love doing those tests.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if they're true or not. Actually, the 16 personalities one is bang on. I will tell you.
Well, and you know what? I think the 16 personalities website and any sort of personality typing is so critical with staff. I constantly do that with my lifeguard candidates, with my instructor candidates, because although they should have something like that in school from their careers class, there's many of these young people that they don't know who they are, and so asking them to decide what kind of teacher they're going to be or swim instructor, they don't even know who they are as a person. And so sometimes it can just be a good rough sketch of where they're at right now, and maybe they will change. They probably will change, but maybe they'll become different, or, things will change in priorities, but at least they can say, okay, this is what's important to me today, and then this is how I interact with others, or in the group we can identify different personality types and talk about how that might cause us to work differently as a team, either better or struggle.
Yeah, I did that. I've done that personalities test a few times within the years. And the first time I took it was just me and my mom were driving in the car and we were bored.
Yeah.
Going to my nanny's house, and we did the personalities test, and I found it really interesting. So then when I was at a private swim school that I was at, some of us and my colleagues were not clicking. We were not clicking, and my boss was like, okay, this is what you have to do. This is due by Friday. Do the 16 personalities test, and then we'll get together, reconvene, and talk about how to connect with each other. And you know what? It actually helped for me to see my personality, and I was like, oh my God, this is so true. But I was like, okay, I can see how that's true with the weaknesses and stuff. I embrace my strengths, but I think it's really important to see, okay, yes, I need to work on these things. And then I think my colleague did the same thing. And then after that, we were so connected. And he's someone I go to for any business advice and stuff like that. So I think those personality tests are so important. And I've been researching a lot on them, and they do say, I didn't even think of this. I didn't even think that my boss made us do this, but that staff, when you do it for staff, show the other staff the summary or whatever they need to know about the other person, it can give you such a different kind of connection, which is so great.
Yes, I mean, I love that your former boss was doing the same thing, and I certainly didn't invent it, right? I think a lot of aquatics people, we've got these shared ideas that are genius. But the first facility I did it at, I asked the staff to do the quiz privately and then send me the results, and then I would just, on the staff from board, put the percentages of each breakdown that we had on staff without identifying who was who. Right, but that I would have their individual personality type, so that when I went to do their performance appraisal, I could really look at them as a person, what I had seen, as well as to better understand them. So I had one employee in particular that it completely changed my perception of him once I knew his personality type. He was always late. Wednesday, his shift started at 4. He was always late.
Oh, no.
And I'm thinking, like, this is textbook easy, right? He's always late. I've counseled him that he's always late. He continues to be late. This is pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
I do the personality typing, and I don't remember what it was, but his type of personality was overly giving and would volunteer to help people and was very caring. And so I reframed in the beginning of the performance appraisal. I said, I've noticed that you're always late on Wednesdays. Is there a reason that you haven't shared with me?
Instead of
that
just
you're always
accusing,
late.
yeah.
Well, and he said, well, I have to pick up my brother at a different school and take him home before I can come to work. And I said, well, that's a reasonable thing to do that changes your availability. And if I had known, I would just schedule you at 4:30.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I didn't want to be difficult and ask for an accommodation. And I said, well, your availability is really that you can't start till 4:30, but I wish you would have told me. We could have saved ourselves a couple weeks of not so friendly conversations if you had just said, hey, I'm taking my baby brother home from his elementary school a few blocks away, as opposed to me thinking that you're texting in your car because you don't want to come into work.
Right.
Right? So that was a great illustration for me that it doesn't change every interaction, but the way I had understood this person, that he was perhaps cold and distant, was that he was very emotionally sensitive and very caring and giving.
Wow.
And so he had his walls up because he thought I was the big scary boss because he was late all the time, but not explaining why he was late for a very good reason.
Wow. That's so insightful. I think that's so cool the way this works.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to jump back a little bit to something you said a few minutes ago about the disconnect from the program when you're in management positions. Mm-hmm. I've been in management positions for a few years now, 3 or 4 years now, and this is something I have noticed too, is that I adore the program. I love the program. I love being on deck. I love mentoring my team, all of that. But when you're in a management position, you have so much to do behind the computer screen. Mm-hmm. So like the first private swim school I managed was great because again, as I said, we were the first in Canada. I brought it to Canada, and I was very much in the program at night during lessons and then behind the screen during the day. Mm-hmm. So I still got that program time. But the other swim school I was just previously at, I was behind the screen. Mm-hmm. And then I was dealing with staff concerns. And then I was dealing with programming and customer service and making sure the facility was run properly and customer complaints and all that stuff. And you don't get to connect with the kids directly, connect with the team directly, right? And I'll tell you, not a weekend person, mm-hmm. not a morning person. So the amount of times I showed up there on a Sunday morning mm-hmm. was minimal to the amount of times I was there on a Monday night, mm-hmm. right? And I didn't get to know, like, the Sunday morning staff. If they only worked 1 day a week and it was Sunday mornings, mm-hmm. I've met them probably 3 times in my year there. Mm-hmm. But what I was going to say is I definitely felt the disconnect between the program and when lessons, 3:30 came, lessons were on, I couldn't focus at my computer anymore. Mm-hmm. I could not do it because program was out, and then you know of the big I term, right? Mm-hmm. So because we have the big I, and I had a window in my office, which is, I loved it, but I hated it at the same time because I couldn't focus on the work I was doing.
Yes.
But I loved it because then I could see, oh, we need to go fix that. Oh, we need to go fix that. Because mm-hmm. that's just how my brain works in aquatics. So a lot of the times I'd go to the back room to get work done. But I'd find that I was on deck a lot of the time. And a lot of the staff asked me at the very beginning, why are you on deck? Why are you mm-hmm. in the water? Like, are you trying to change everything we're doing? And I'm like, no, I mm-hmm. genuinely love the program. I genuinely love being in the water, being here. I'm not trying to criticize you. If I see something that's completely wrong and unsafe, I'm gonna fix it. But other than that, I just love watching and mentoring and seeing. And that was at the time where I was learning a new program as well. So yeah, but I definitely felt that disconnect, and I couldn't find a balance where I was. And the people I worked for were much like, you're the manager, you don't get in the water anymore unless you absolutely have to. You do all the stuff behind the screen, right? So that was hard for me as well. So I definitely get you there.
Yeah, I don't have all the answers. I think I have the benefit of hindsight now, having left my role as an aquatic facility manager, to be able to better inform the advice or the counseling that I give either clients or peers in terms of what worked or what didn't work. Towards the end, what was most helpful to me was thinking about it in the context of my hourly wage, right? So if I'm an aquatic facility manager and my employer is paying me, let's say $42 an hour to manage all aspects of the facility, certainly if a lifeguard calls in sick and the immediacy that the swim lesson needs to be covered, I will get in the pool and teach, and it'll be great.
Yeah.
But then if I'm looking at the accountability, because I was municipal, to ratepayers of that hourly wage, is it the best use of their resources for me to fill in for aqua fitness when somebody else on shift could defer some work that they're doing and just go and sub? Right. So for me, that made it a little bit more black and white to know what the right thing was to do, because I am a very giving person and I would be there all the time in all the lessons and all of the... And I think it's hard to balance that. Unfortunately, it is also a double standard, because I know when I first got to my facility, my guards said to me, my most recent facility, my guards had said to me, we love that you're on deck. We love that you're not hiding behind a computer screen. The previous facility manager had worked a very regimented schedule of 7 a.m. to 2 p.m., and so didn't cover evenings, didn't cover weekends, wasn't really aware of what was happening during high traffic times. And I said, for me as a person, I like the life flexibility of maybe I grocery shop on a Friday morning and I work a Friday night.
Yeah.
Like, I want to keep you on your toes. I could be here at any day, any time. Yeah. And Sunday afternoon, let me tell you, is a great time to get emails done, because although the guards are busy, nobody's responding.
Right.
So to cycle back to your question, it's a double standard, because the guards loved that I was on deck, but then as I was doing my job well and getting processes in place and organization in place, I didn't need to be on deck anymore, because staffing was good, people knew the expectations, people knew their roles. And then towards the end, it became, well, why is Katie never on deck? She doesn't appreciate us. She doesn't want to spend time with us. She spends more time with the other managers, drive programmer, the facilities supervisor. She doesn't care about us. And I'd have to say, look, I can serve you best when the pool is flying under the radar. We're doing what we need to do. The customers are happy. We're not in the rant and rave group for the local community. I am doing what I need to be doing. I'm still at every in-service. We're still doing... I was always doing things like Valentine's Day chocolates or Easter chocolates, right? Just little kind of reminders that, hey, I'm not there, like you mentioned, I'm not there at 6 a.m. on Friday. Not really a morning person either, unless I have to open. But it is that balance of, you want to see the manager, you want to know that they exist, but then it's also, I would say to the guards at the end, it's also on you to come see me. My door is always open. I have a window. I'm not hiding. I will stop and chat with you, but I can't be everywhere at once.
Exactly.
Right? And the accountability is that the pool needs to run, and it's running. If something's not working, you have to let me know, right? Like I need that communication, that active communication. It's not osmosis that I know
exactly
what's what.
And the transparency between you and your team is key. That's definitely a big part about the open communication, is now I trust you guys. Like, not that I didn't before, but you're running it really well, and I have other things to do.
Yes.
For me, that was a hard balance too, because I was new and I was only on a maternity leave contract.
Right.
So it for one of the pools I was at. So it was kind of like I was a guest in their house, right? I got to know and trust a lot of the people there, but it was just a balance of when to step in and when to not, right? And a little bit on that too, I wanted to talk to you about work-life balance. Because in aquatics, because it's not a 9-to-5 job, we don't really have that, especially as aquatics managers. I know, like, some Saturdays I'd be there all day. Some Mondays I'd be there till midnight doing what I needed to do if it was a really chaotic day and stuff like that. So I just wanted to talk to you about work-life balance, because now that we have cell phones and we give our cell phones out and we have them on the emergency procedures, if something goes wrong, call me. Everyone has your number, so even if it's not an emergency and they just want an extra opinion, they call you, and you could be doing whatever at home. This is not your time off, but technically you're in charge. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So work-life balance is definitely a challenge, and I think somebody who, and I don't remember who said this, somebody said it best. It really resonated with me when I heard of seasons. So balance suggests that we should be in alignment and things should be equal and that there's no tipping point.
Right.
I think it makes more sense to think of seasons, and so there will always be tips, highs and lows, but then we'll go from a high to a low in terms of busyness versus quiet.
Right.
So think about even a regular pool schedule. You start lessons, week 1, it's a little bit chaotic, the kids don't know where to go, but everybody expects it the first day.
Yeah.
Second week, there's a few new kids, there's a couple kids that need to be transferred, but by week 3 and week 4, people know where they're going, unless dad comes and doesn't know what Paige looks like.
Yeah.
Admin helps with that. Weeks 3, 4, 5, 6, pretty quiet. If it's an 8-week set, week 7, we're writing report cards, we're doing assessments. The last 2 weeks, maybe weeks 8 and 9, they're fun, they're erratic, and then we're going into our new registration period.
Yeah.
We can expect that, and I think when we think about our personal lives, we should also expect that there may be seasons that are busier than others. Right? So in the non-aquatics world, many people take summers off. And I constantly have to explain to non-aquatic people, nobody in aquatics is taking vacation in the summer. That is the busiest time of the year for us, right? That is our go time. That is our busy time. Meanwhile, Christmas, when everybody else in the non-aquatics world is perhaps crazy and stressed with shopping and holidays, many pools are dialing down because people don't want to come to sports. And so I guess to get back to your original question is just saying that work-life balance is having that open communication with your staff. I'm a big fan of phoning and not texting. So if you have an emergency, you need to pick up the phone and call me. I will not be checking my phone for texts. You have an emergency, you need to call me, and I find that also keeps the time that I'm spending much smaller. Maybe it's 5 minutes on a phone call as opposed to that waiting period for somebody waiting to respond to a text. Am I going to get another text?
Right.
Do they expect me to check my phone again in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
With a phone call, at the end of the call, I either know they have to call me back or I need to call someone else and then call them back. It's very much cut and done, and then the phone goes back wherever it is.
How did you set up that culture at your workplace? Because for me, I'd be like, okay, call me if there's an emergency, let me know whenever you need help or mentorship, or if you have a question, let me know to my supervisors.
Right.
But then if a random person was like, I need to know about this, I might not be there on that day, or whatever, I'd be like, okay, just text me, or just email me, because if I'm not at work, that was my one thing, if I'm not at work, I'm not on my emails.
For sure.
So I was like, if I'm not there, you gotta text me, because I won't know. And then it started with, everyone was texting me about, oh, I'm not gonna be there today. Message your supervisor, not me. Yes. Right? So how did you set up that culture and stick with it?
So definitely, emails are involved with that. So even if you're going to be, let's say you picked up Wednesday lessons and then your class schedule changed and you can't do it, I mean, I would expect them to send me an email so that I have that record so that I go and change our scheduling software. If it's an emergency, you know, you've been in, heaven forbid, a car accident, you're going to be calling me because you have to deal with the car accident. And as much as you might think texting is easier and faster, it's often not.
Right.
So it was always communicating any changes, no matter how big or how small, via email. And then if it's emergency happening in the next 12 hours, right, or before my next shift back at work. So I put my schedule on when to work, which was our scheduling software, because I had a lot of lifeguards finding they would say, well, I don't know when you're in next for work, because I would work in a regular schedule to flex and cover. You need to check when to work, and if your situation is an emergency before I will be back in at work, whatever when to work says, you need to send me an email, and if it's an emergency, you need to call me. And then texting was simply handled as Katie doesn't text, right?
Yeah.
And I still have employees that I've become friends with to this day who, let's say I send an emoji with some sort of news article, will say, oh my God, are you texting? Right? 'Cause it was just Katie doesn't text, period. And it sounds so weird and it's so novel in this day and age, but it was just Katie doesn't text. We do emails. We do some scheduling softwares have internal messaging or group messaging or group texting that the staff can use.
Right.
But if you need to communicate with Katie, you call, you send an email. And I would occasionally pick up my phone throughout the weekend or my days off and look at my email headings.
Right.
But there was never, I never created an expectation with my staff that I will get your email that you sent on Saturday night before Monday at noon, if that's when my next shift is posted and when to work, that it will be. So it's definitely an ongoing process. And it's definitely the seasons. So I think with my work-life balance and communication, just saying I have no problem being busy at the pool, serving my guards, serving my clients. When we're busy, we're in the thick of summer. Yeah. We're busy. Right?
Of course.
I'm going to be busy. And then if I take a couple weeks off at Christmas, that's because we were busy in the summer. So I think balance is just impossible to achieve. I rather think of ebbs and flows, busy and quiet, because then it doesn't create a disappointment that it's really busy right now.
Right.
Well, Aquatics is going to be busy for the next 2.5 weeks. Yeah. And then it'll die down.
Right. I like that. I really do. It's definitely hard to think about, and sometimes you're just so excited, and that's when you want to be at work. But I find aquatics can get overwhelming because it's never ending.
It is.
And a lot of people in the States probably think, well, you have winter months, but we have indoor facilities, and it's still never ending. And you can get burnout from that really quickly, so you have to just take care of yourself too. And that's why when emails were coming in, even when I was off, and then I'm the kind of person, if I get an email, I need to see it. I need to see it and see what's going on. Even if I don't respond right then and there, at least I know what's going on. I click view as unread, and then I know it's still there. So I turned my notifications off because I was getting so overwhelmed and burnt out. I had to turn my notifications off when I wasn't at work. Because when I was at work, I had it open, always.
Yeah, see, and I definitely started, before I left my last municipal job, so probably 4 years ago, I turned off notifications on my desktop email, and that was life-changing. Wow. So that's like saying I don't get the alert that an email is coming in, and I'm getting to a place where I check my email, let's say, once every hour, or I only check email in a certain window. And it started because I had a supervisor, she was temporary covering a leave. She said, well, I was complaining about clients, so municipal ratepayers calling my phone and not getting an immediate response because I was not at my desk. In the initial period, I was new to the facility, everything was not working. Right. I was on deck, but I would get these customers calling and saying, hi, this is Mrs. Smith. You haven't called me back in the last 30 minutes. And I would call Mrs. Smith back maybe 6 hours later and say, I apologize, Mrs. Smith, but my type of work takes me around the building and I'm on my feet. I may not be at my desk. And so the supervisor had said, well, you need to look at the problem, which is they have an expectation that you have a desk job. Why don't you change your voicemail to say, I'm on my feet a lot. I'm only at my desk a couple times a day. It may take me up to 24 hours to return your call.
Oh.
And so I actually just saw this on somebody's email recently, and I may do this with my email. So in their email signature, this individual had written something very similar. So rather than only checking their email twice a day and trying to corral the number of distractions as those emails came in, and then the brain capacity is thinking, oh, well, Susie's wondering about pool space at 4 o'clock. I should get back to her right away.
Right.
And you can't turn that off. This person wrote in their email signature, I just got this a couple days ago, we only respond to emails received between the hours of 11 and 3. So if I emailed at 4 o'clock, I know that I'm not going to expect anything till at least the next day at 11:15. And that batching of the work is both for their boundaries to be able to not have that mental space taken up.
Right.
This was a creative person, a designer, like for online design for websites. So if they need that brain power to be creative, why not say, I'm only going to do email in that 4-hour window? Because 5 or 10 years ago, we did do emails once a day. Now there's this expectation, it's been 30 minutes. Why haven't I heard you from you?
Right.
Right? So
Yeah.
if you set your own boundaries and say, okay, that's when I'm going to do it, or in certain service delivery models, customer service may not necessarily permit for that, but for regular emails, staff especially, I mean, if they're expecting that you're going to be available, they're going to wait to the last minute to communicate.
Of
right?
course, yeah. What you said a while ago was that you posted your schedule. I know there's a split on this one. There's I'm going to post my schedule so my team knows when I'm going to be there. And then that way you look more present as well. Rather than I'm not going to post my schedule so my team doesn't know, that's why I can come in and everyone should be doing their job instead of on their best behavior when I'm there. But it looks like you're more absent because no one ever knows when you're there.
The number of times my schedule was posted, and the first job I had, so 8 years ago as an aquatic manager, it was literally just a posted on my door before we got to When to Work, which is a scheduling software. It was literally a posted on my door. And the number of times, even later years, that I would come into work, let's say on a Sunday morning, and the guards would go, oh, we didn't know you were coming in today. And I would say, well, it's on the door or it's on the software. Oh, well, we don't check your schedule unless we need it. So I would challenge those people who say that they want to be able to audit their staff, that you're coming from a place of fear about either what you're going to find or that you're expecting your staff to be doing a bad job and you're not going to be able to catch them doing a good job. And that once you get over that fear and your staff have mutual trust, I mean, they're honestly not going to care when you come in because there's nothing to hide.
Exactly. I'm at that mindset too, is, okay, sure, if I don't know the team or if I'm just hiring a new team, I might not have the most trust yet, but that's just because of the world we work in, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as I get to know my team, I know they're doing what they need to be doing when they need to be doing it, right? And I feel like it's so beneficial to have that schedule posted, because if I need something from you, if I go into work and I need to speak to you as my manager, I know when you're not going to be there. I worked at one facility where the manager always had her schedule posted, and she wasn't like other managers that I've had where they have their schedule posted but then don't show up for that schedule. And they come in a few hours late or leave a few hours early or whatever it may be. She had her schedule posted. She had her meeting times when she wasn't going to be in the office. She had everything. And that's the first thing I would check when I went in. No matter if I needed her or anything, it was just nice to know because of that support too, right?
But you have to stick to it. So that's the one thing I would say is don't post it if you can't be sufficiently transparent and commit to it. So I do know that initially I had to figure out what kind of categories I was putting on the public information, because if I had a meeting, I wanted to be able to write meeting so that my staff would know if I didn't come back 60 minutes later, I was probably still at the meeting and it ran late.
Right.
But enough detail like that, but then also not, termination at 4 o'clock, right? You have to also create some vagaries that way, but you are accountable. If you're going to post it, you have to own it. It's the same as your staff. If they're expected to be here from 8 to 4, you can't, at least in my opinion, you can't expect them to be on time if you're not on time. I mean, you can be the type of person who works. I had one person who worked for me. She did her best work after 11 a.m. She could work before 11 a.m. If she was needed, she would.
Yeah.
But her best work was done after 11 a.m. So I just said, well, the work you're currently doing is flexible. Let's create an expectation with the staff that they will not see you before 11, because if it appears that you're arriving late at 11 instead of starting at 11, then that's not going to be fair in terms of how they perceive your value as a worker for this team. Right? If I'm saying, oh, I want this individual to cover the after-school rush, so they will work 11 to 7:30.
Right.
That's the framing, as opposed to, oh, she doesn't really work well at 8:30 to 11, so we're going to move her. That doesn't matter. This is why she's here. This is when she's here. If you need her outside of those hours, we can set something up. We can flex. We can block. We can shift. But
that's true.
This is what we do.
I think I did that very well with my team. I've made the expectation that Paige is not a morning person unless you absolutely need me, or unless I've told you prior, I will not be here before 10:30. And they all knew that. I'd walk in at 10:30 or 11, they'd be like, good morning, because I just couldn't, unless it was like a morning where I said, okay, I'm going to be there in the morning because you need my help, or it's an extra busy day because it's a reg week, or whatever it might be. So,
I mean, I think also in 2020, we're looking at the workforce differently in general, and 100%. Traditional modes of saying, okay, we're going to work 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, 5, Monday to Friday. That's never existed in aquatics, so aquatics is already an outlier. But I think we've seen in more recent years, as people start their own business, or they work remotely, or they work as consultants, that there really is no perfect model. Yeah. Right? The 5-day work week didn't exist prior to the Industrial Revolution. People just worked when there was work, and they took time off when there was a break, right? The same with farmers, where I am in Alberta. The summer is crazy, and then the winter is quiet. The work needs to get done. And so I'm a strong proponent of, if you have the energy and the desire and you're in a groove, do the work. If you want to work 10 hours today and then work 6 hours tomorrow, that's fine by me.
Yeah.
HR doesn't like that. But for me as a consultant now, I might have a client who needs me in the evenings, or who might need me at 5 a.m., or who might need me on, not Christmas Day hasn't come up, but who might have a specific need. And as long as I compensate myself with that time at a later date, it's a market advantage that I'm available, but it's also practical because operationally these aquatic facilities are open.
Yeah.
We're deluding ourselves by thinking the more senior we get, or the more experienced we get, or the higher we get, that we can check out.
Yeah.
When my husband has a military background, and he will always, always, always say, the leader is boots on the ground with his people. And I'll try and remind him of that when I'm home for 12 hours between one client and another. And it's like, hi, honey. Hi, gotta repack, do some laundry, and gotta go. I'm boots on the ground. That's why I'm not here.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, I guess I'll see you next week. Right?
Yeah.
So that's it. It has downsides. It's not entirely glamorous. Sometimes when I talk to people that follow me on Instagram, they think it's all, great meals and great hotels, and it's not, buses at 5:30 in the morning when it's really cold and dragging a suitcase with a bum wheel. Like it's just having the right attitude, and the work just needs to get done.
And honestly, if you're passionate about it, if you love it, and it's still work, but you're excited about it, right? Like, I am so excited about aquatics and moving up and starting my career, and this is what I want to do. So I feel like if you're passionate about it, yes, it's still work. Yes, it still sucks to bus at 5:30 in the morning, but you're excited about it, right? I think that's really cool. And I like how you're talking about the whole leadership side, where you're boots on the ground with your people. And you see many of those things on Facebook where they have what's a boss and what's a leader.
Correct.
Where the red person is like carrying the team with the leader, and the boss is like, you do what I tell you to do. So I think that's really cool.
Well, and I think aquatics has the benefit of teaching us, when we started as guards, that it is very hierarchical in the sense of you need to learn your facility, you need to learn the procedures. Just because you have an NL or a lifeguard certificate, that doesn't make you a good lifeguard. You are responsible for becoming a good lifeguard through your practice scenarios, your training, your ongoing education, right? I tell people this when I do the certified pool operator course. We are doing a 2-day driver's education. You are leaving with a learner's permit to operate a pool. The province considers you certified. That doesn't mean you know what you're doing, and I can't teach you everything in 2 days. Things will break, things will go wrong, you will be faced with ethical decisions that you can make the wrong decision and you probably won't get caught, but you have to be your own person. Yeah. And you have to go from here and keep learning. So although aquatics is hierarchical, the benefit of that is that it's also egalitarian. So if you don't perform, you fall down the ladder. Yeah. And I think that's sometimes shocking to people because they think in other trades or in other industries, well, the oldest person or the person who's been here the longest is not the best or is the best. And I'll say with aquatics, often complacency is your downfall. If you only work at one facility for 6, 7, 8 years and you only work the 5 a.m. open till noon, you're only seeing the same clients, you're only seeing the same situations, you're not versatile. And if you're okay with that, that's perfectly fine, right? You get your mornings and you get your afternoons with your kids, totally fine. But aquatics is constantly changing, it's dynamic, and so if you really, really want to be knowledgeable and you want to go far, then you're going to have to put in the time because someone else on your shift is putting in the time.
I 100% agree with that. That's so weird to some people, whereas I'm the highest one up here. You can't push me down, you can't give me these shifts. But on the moving different facilities and seeing new things, it was so eye-opening to me. So what actually pushed me to change facilities is that my facility that I was working at for the first 2 years of my guarding aquatics career was closing for renovations.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I had to go to a different facility, and that one was the most strict, like had the most routine, and it actually was probably the facility that made me the aquatics person that I am, which I am very grateful for. A lot of people didn't like that culture, which I understand too. Then after that, I started moving around pool to pool to pool within the municipality that I work. And then that's kind of what got me, okay, let's try the private sector, right? So I think that's so important for people to be versatile, because I'll work at one facility that is the most lenient facility of the municipality that I work in, and they haven't worked anywhere else. And I'm like, go experience the other facilities, because yes, it's within the same city, but it's such different cultures, right?
It's interesting because you can actually learn from things that you like as well as things that you don't like. I will often tell people you're so focused on finding the best experience or the nice experience or maximizing something, when often the terrible or the mediocre experiences will also give us very important lessons about what we don't want to do or what we don't want to be.
100%.
Right? And I think the benefit of different facilities is you're seeing different personalities, different facility infrastructure, different team members, different habits, different practices. And I guess it's interesting because I don't consider myself someone who's averse to change at all, right? Lifeguarding, as you know, your shift might be guarding lane swim, and then you have a nosebleed, and then there's a fire alarm, and then some kid is missing, and then the pool chemistry is off. You're constantly changing in the middle of shift, right? Yeah. The shift is never show up, cash out customers, and go home. It's very dynamic. We learn to adapt on the fly. So aquatics people are really good at that. But it's very interesting that they're very good at that, and then they are so set at only working at the same facility. And I say to so many of my former staff that I'm still in touch with, you know, you're limiting yourself by being in the same place. And I'm not suggesting you become a dilettante and only go work there for one semester or only teach one course and then quit. I'm saying do some educated research. do some research, educate yourself about what you're looking for. So
Mhm.
I want to teach perhaps more aqua fitness classes, and my facility doesn't offer a lot of those. So where can I go and teach one class a week?
Right.
Or maybe I want to teach more leadership. I want to teach more first aid classes. I want to teach more lifeguarding classes. I want to do WSI research. What facility needs extra leadership instructors? Right? You can be on staff at 5 or 6 different facilities and only work at 1 or 2 facilities a month. That's just how aquatics is.
Yeah.
And yet people get so focused on, okay, well, I'm at this pool. You are, but that pool will also benefit from you going somewhere else.
Right.
In addition to you going somewhere else.
Exactly.
So they're generally, most employers are very understanding because
Mhm.
it improves the quality of their staff. And as long as it doesn't conflict and you're actually managing your time and your schedules, so there's no
100%, yeah.
conflict, you're going to be better and more valuable to them
Mhm.
because other facilities may train you to do classes.
Mhm.
You may see a really cool technique in in-service somewhere else. You might see new equipment. I mean, you're always coming from a place of fear that what you have is better than what you could have.
Right.
Right? And so I just find it so interesting that we're so flexible at aquatics, and yet so many people are so stagnant at the same facility.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's an asset. I have probably learned some of my best management traits from things that I did not want to be or take with me as a manager or as a supervisor. I wanted to talk to you about CPO and how you got into that.
Yeah, so I am a certified pool operator instructor with the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance. Most Canadians are not familiar with the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance. It's the merger that occurred in 2019 for the National Swimming Pool Foundation, which is in Colorado, and then the Association of Pool and Spa Professionals in Virginia. So together, they're now the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance. The connection to Canada is that the Pool and Hot Tub Alliance Certified Pool Operator course has been around for over 50 years. It is accredited in all Canadian provinces and 105 countries around the world. So it is a standardized curriculum that individuals can take. You know, if they move to Australia, they move to the US, it goes everywhere.
Right.
So how I got to teaching this course is actually a funny story because I am not somebody who likes to collect certifications like the quals collector who's not going to use them, right? I don't want to be that person that picks up things unless they're actually going to use them for learning or teaching.
Right.
So maybe 6 years ago, I was hosting a certified pool operator course at my facility. The local health authority in Alberta was delivering the course, and the instructor at the time had connected with me to book the tour, and she just said, would you be willing to do the tour? It's nice to have a little bit of a break from talking for 2 days, and you know your facility best, so why don't you introduce your facility?
Right.
So I did the tour, and that was it. And then a couple days later, she emailed me to say, thanks for the tour. Oh, and by the way, you need to become a CPO instructor. And I did exactly what you did. I laughed, and I went, well, why would I do that? And she said 2 things. She said, 1, you actually know what you're talking about. And the health inspectors, all due respect to them, when they teach the CPO, they're coming from the education perspective of how best to run a pool without ever actually having run a pool day to day, right? So they have the how you should do it, but not how we have to do it day to day. And then the second thing she said, which I wasn't sure how I felt about initially, was she said, you're young and you're female. And there's not enough women in the mechanical operations side of the industry. I think you would be so much more accessible than some of my colleagues who are male, and you can clearly do it.
Interesting.
So I put that in my pocket and immediately disregarded what she said. And 4 or 5 months later, I interviewed for a different job in a different town. And one of the things that the individual who was interviewing me mentioned, because it was pretty important, was that the pool had been mismanaged for a long period of time, both on the programming side in terms of lessons not changing or improving, but also operationally, they had no pool operators. There had only been one person trained with a CPO certification, and so many provinces or cities require operators to be trained for the permit to operate, but it is also a basic level of information. And so it was speaking to the fact that very few of the lifeguards, unfortunately, knew how the pool ran. They didn't understand the chemistry. They didn't understand, the mechanics.
Yeah.
So to make a long story short, this individual said in the interview process, you know, how would you respond to a facility that's been mismanaged and how would you clean it up? And I thought, oh, well, and I said in the interview, well, I've actually looked at becoming a CPO instructor, and so I could build capacity in this facility by becoming a trainer of CPOs and then deliver it in-house.
Right.
And so I don't know if that tipped the interview or not, but I got the job, and then they said, well, when are you going to become a CPO instructor?
And you're like, damn, I wasn't actually going to do that.
But as you know, to build capacity internally, when you can just pay the wholesale rate for materials and licensing fees. Mm-hmm. So we were able to train about 10 people after I went to become a CPO instructor. And it ended up being that the municipality couldn't support me in the cost of that. So there's no ethical issues there. But I did get the credential and I used it for my staff. And then for about a year, that was it. And then I got to a place where I thought, well, I need some extra money. This was around the time I decided to start my own business. And I thought, well, CPO, there's not a lot of CPO instructors where I am in Alberta. And so I was very concerned with competing with my neighboring facilities as my own affiliate. And I didn't want to step on any toes in terms of offering either first aid courses or lifeguarding courses. And so I thought, well, CPO is safe because not a lot of people are offering it.
Right.
And so that's actually become by volume, the largest course that we teach. It's probably, I'll see 350 CPO students and a year and maybe less than 100 leadership students. And it's a great class to teach. It's so different from lifeguarding. It's so different from first aid. And the perspective that it brings me as a former, well, I'm still a lifeguard, but I'm not on deck very often. The perspective that it brings me is we kind of have this two-tier system in our minds as lifeguards. We preference and privilege lifeguarded pools because that's how we work. That's how we get paid.
Right.
And so we kind of think of unlifeguarded hotel pools, condo pools, you know, outdoor pools as kind of the ugly stepsister. They're not worth our time or efforts. And when I think about my clients who come to my CPO classes and they manage these facilities, they are so passionate to make their water safe, and they have so few resources because they don't have staff, they don't always have rescue equipment, they don't always have the benefit of time, dedicated pool operators. They're doing building mechanical, they're doing snow removal, they're doing HVAC, they're doing everything for a building and the pool, and yet the pool is the highest risk amenity, right? And so it's really brought me down to my level to understand lifeguards are great, aquatic staff are great, pools are great, but that's only half of the industry. The other half of the industry deserves the same level of support, the same level of education. And so I think what makes me really good when I do the CPO, my clients get the benefit of all of my experience and my passion. And if they're passionate, it really ignites a desire in them to learn more about pools and do the best job that they can, rather than saying, oh, you're just a hotel pool. Because many service providers don't take them that seriously. It's a quote-unquote small pool. It's not worthy of their attention because it's not a big enough revenue source. When the number of customers I know who will swim in that hotel pool in the next 5 years that the CPO award holder is trained is probably more than the average lifeguard is getting in their lane swim shifts, right, on Tuesdays. Right? So
I agree. And it's hard because a lot of the hotel and fitness center pools, I used to run a swim school out of hotel and fitness center pools. They're not maintained correctly, probably because they don't have trained CPO operators.
Correct.
Right? So I'd go in with my test kit, test the water, and the amount of times we had to cancel classes because the pool was not safe was ridiculous. It was really hurtful. So I definitely, personally, I haven't taken my CPO yet. I know enough about how
most lifeguards do.
Run. Yeah. I've been in many different pump rooms. I know mostly how the operations run, but not enough. Like, if you ask me to backwash a pool confidently, no way. If I had a how-to in front of me, I would know the valves to push and, like, do whatever, but no way. Like, I need that course. That's why I reached out to you a few months ago, but I think I'm going to do your next one, which is awesome, which is really cool. But I think that too, because as lifeguards, I never really had to.
Mm-hmm.
One facility, two maybe, we had to go down, test the waters, look at the influent, effluent, look at the temperature, like do all that stuff, but we never had to do anything with the pool. The last facility I was at, I had to do a little bit more as the manager. We had to do dump and fills. I had to check I can't think of the name.
Chemicals, filters, water levels.
No, the UV.
Okay, so that it was running.
Yeah, so I learned a little bit more about that, and we had 2 different pumps, so one would be on, one would be off, and then switch it. But other than that, like, I have no clue.
So lifeguards are very lucky. Currently, a lot of lifeguards do learn like you did. And so that's how I started initially. So I'm doing water tests to verify what are the chlorine levels, what are the pH levels, total alkalinity.
Of course.
Going in and I'm checking that the pump is running. I'm checking filters. Unfortunately, a lot of municipalities in the Greater Toronto Area are moving based on union parameters to segregate aquatic being lifeguard staff from operators, and so they are not allowing that overlap that is allowing people to pick up information on the job. And so I think that's a challenge that we're facing. But in terms of the province, Ontario is interesting because prior to the 2018 health regulation update, so July 1st, 2018, there was no operator training requirement in the province of Ontario.
Interesting.
And so a lot of building, mechanical, and maintenance is learned on the job through shadowing, same as lifeguarding. So I shadow Paige for 3 weeks. She shows me everything that we do using our staff training checklists, and that determines my level of competency. And if Paige does a good job and our supervisor does a perception check, we're covered. The challenge with that in the pool world, in the building mechanical side that is not strictly aquatics, so the hotels, the condo buildings, is your experience of not being confident. Imagine the person with no experience. Maybe they're an HVAC technician, maybe they're a plumber, because a lot of people assume that plumbers know water, so they should take care of the pool. And I get these calls from plumbers or guys in my class that say, I've been handed a pool and I know that I wouldn't put my grandbaby in it, but I don't know how to fix it, right? And so the pool operator course is an important certification to meet the credentials of the province, which now requires training, but it's also that driver's ed and giving you the lay of the land. So what is filtration? What is chemical treatment? What are the diseases that are possible? What are the safety requirements? Right? And so it is just a 2-day class, 16 hours, and we can't cover everything. But that's where I continue to be in touch with a lot of my students. I do respond to texts now as a consultant. So I will get texts that include things like photos or is this okay or what should I do? I've had calls at all hours because people want support in making hard decisions. And unfortunately, in an era of do more with less and downward pressure on wages, there's a tendency to say, the pool shouldn't take that much time. It's just a vat of water. Right. And that's how you experienced, Paige, that your programs were canceled when you rented these facilities because they were the last thing on the workload for that day.
Exactly.
Right? If a hotel room has a leaking toilet and slippery sidewalks, they're not going to get to the pool until maybe after you've showed up and done your own checks. And that's a constant conversation I have with my operators, coaching them to have these discussions with management and say, you know what, we have so many hotel rooms, we really need another maintenance person, or we really need an on-call, or I need my shift to start 30 minutes before the pool opens because there is no wiggle room. They're for-profit institutions, and that's been a whole education for me coming from nonprofit municipal lifeguard, right, that we had the benefit, I think about it now, we had dedicated lifeguards and pool operators 16 hours a day. Right? If we needed anything, we had someone.
They were there.
And that's not the case with a lot of my clients now.
Yeah, exactly. I can tell you, Sundays, pool, always canceled. We always canceled lessons. Saturdays, it was on the ball.
Right.
Because that's their highest volume,
period.
Right?
Yeah, highest use period.
For sure. When I was at my previous facility, we did have a team of 1, 2, 3... maintenance people, maybe 3 or 4 maintenance people. And one morning, that was one of the times I was there on a Sunday morning because I was teaching a class or doing a staff training or something. I don't know what I was doing. And my supervisor comes in. She was like, Paige, I need you right now. I was like, okay, guys, group work. I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, the pump room is all red lights. All of the alarms is going off. I don't know what to do because we had one flicker.
Mm-hmm.
So the lights flickered once,
Mm-hmm.
everything stopped. There was no flow of the pool anymore.
Sure.
The flow stopped, the UV stopped, like everything. So I went in the pump room. I have never seen a pump room like that in all era before. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I tried doing like what I could, what I knew how to do, but I was like, no, this is bigger than me. So I had to call my maintenance people, and he tried to coach me from his home. And I swear, I was doing everything he told me to. I was like, it's still in there. I don't know what to do. You need to get here now. I don't want to cancel lessons. Like, there's no flow of the pool. Right. So everything is just sitting, right? You need to get here now.
That's such a common conversation, and I think the challenge is because we're never able to be proactive, we're only reactive, and so that's not a value judgment on your maintenance guy, but that's saying that his boss or the workload that he had prohibited him from ever sitting and writing a checklist of what to do after the power flickers. Right? And so that's where, even I'm guilty of this as a business owner, when something becomes an emergency, I don't think, let me stop and write down what I'm doing, right? I deal with the emergency, and then I hope it doesn't happen again, and then I'm all surprised when it happens again.
Yeah.
And so the number of facilities I visit that have no plan in place for an emergency, a medical emergency, a power outage.
Yeah.
I mean, these systems are expensive mechanical systems. They are not intended to just reset like a breaker, right? You need to actually assess something before turning it back on, or you need to, if you want to install some sort of restart system, then you can do that. Building automation is a thing, but if that's not installed because someone was cheap when they built the pool,
right,
you need to manually go and check it. That was the cost. Was it save on staff wages or save on equipment? And they chose to save on equipment at the expense of staff wages.
Yeah.
So it's very common, and unfortunately, I wish I could say that every person who leaves my class is actually going and then creating these procedures. Most people are not. Their workload is such that they do get these calls, and they do just deal with them in a one-off. But that's, I mean, safety and what to do with power outages discussed in the CPO class, because it's going to happen, especially in an urban area like Toronto. Somebody hits an electrical pole and they have to disconnect the power for a couple hours. Yeah. I mean, you're not a vital service unless you have a generator. The power is going out.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And as you said, once the water is not circulating, you can't have people in it, and the possibility for bacteria to grow is very high.
Exactly.
Because it's just a stagnant bathtub.
Not just that situation, but we had a lot of situations with like pool issues and HVAC issues and all that kind of stuff. I think that is what really pushed me. Okay, I need to take my CPO because I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm okay to admit that, because one day I will know what I'm doing.
Sure.
Right? But as a potential business owner, I want to start my own company, you know what I mean? Like, I want to be in aquatics for the rest of my life. Even if I don't start my own company, I still need to know what I'm doing in the pump room.
Well, and any leader needs to be able to do within reason what their staff can do.
Of course.
And so certainly if you want to manage a private swim school, then you want to be able to supervise your technicians, and they should be able to say, hey, I'm going to a doctor's appointment, can you fill in?
Yeah.
The biggest thing I think with what I see client-wise is there is a mix. There's people who will admit, as you said, many lifeguards are very self-aware from a leadership feedback loop perspective or assessments they've had over the years. I don't know what I don't know. The sooner I admit it, the sooner I can learn and we can move forward together.
Exactly.
But in the workforce, I encounter a lot of guys in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. They have created their role, or they've retained their role by being the sole source of information.
Yeah.
And so their fear is that by commodifying the information, then they are expendable.
Right.
And as opposed to thinking, no, if you train Paige or you train Katie, then you get a day off. Or if you train Paige or Katie, then you won't be called out in the middle of a hockey game, right? You need to be able to think broader, like we were saying before, that what you've got now, you're coming from a place of assuming it's better than what it could be.
Right.
Yes, there will be more work, same as onboarding a new staff member. When you're short, you're short. The first 4 weeks after you make a new hire is not any better. You're training them, you're supporting them, then you can take a breather once they're ready to go, right? Same thing with mechanical. It's not, initially it's harder. What are the processes? What are the labels we need? What are the checklists? Are we doing it right? That's the other piece. A lot of them are hiding things that they're not doing right because they learned it from Joey 25 years ago, and Joey just invented his own method.
Yeah.
Right? You know, I'm going to show you how to do it. We're not supposed to do it this way, but we've always done it this way.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And that's not always the best for an operator role, especially where water chemistry could create a negligence or liability situation for the facility.
Right. And you know what? I have so many mentors in operations side, but as well as mechanical side. I used to work on the maintenance team for a big municipality facility, but it wasn't just pool. Like the pool was, I just went down and checked every 2 hours. But other than that, it was cleaning and like setting up rooms and other stuff. So I had a basic knowledge from that too. But when I went to the first one, when I was at hotels and fitness center pools, I got to the point where I asked this fitness center, I was like, I'm going to come in an hour early and look at your pump room. And if I need to fix something, I have an hour to fix it.
Correct.
Right? One day I went in, I was like, okay, this is going to be the third week in a row I have to cancel lessons. This can't happen. I need to fix it now. I called my old colleague from the maintenance team, Vince. It's like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Please help me. And he's like, okay, what does it look like? Send me a picture. Okay, this is what you need to do. I was like, thank you. He's like, do they have muriatic acid? I was like, no. He's like, go buy some right now. Like, whatever it was. But I value those relationships. I definitely do.
Well, and I think it's also coming from a place where you're anticipating problems. I had a student in a CPO class last year, maybe 2 years ago now, and it was so interesting to me. It was a great learning experience because he came from a trade. He was going to be covering a pool part-time at a campground in exchange for free accommodations during the summer.
Oh, cool.
Right? So it sounds like a good deal.
Yeah.
But he came from a trade where things, I guess, just don't go wrong. And so when we were texting and emailing, he was experiencing chemical level changes in the water. One of the things he said was, I don't understand why the chemical levels keep changing. And I said, it's dynamic, like the thermostat in your house with the window open.
Right.
Today it's cold out. Maybe tomorrow we have these things called Chinooks in Alberta where it's like a warm front. You don't change your thermostat every day. The thermostat regulates changing circumstances. The pool has a controller that's required by law in Ontario for units of a certain size and up. It will regulate chlorine delivery, pH control.
Right.
But that's for the normal size of pool, the normal size of use. If you get 45 kids from hockey practice, it can only do so much in that short window.
Yeah.
You're going to have to adjust. And he said, well, I don't understand why I always have to be ready for it to change. It should just stay the way it is. And I said, water, being a pool operator is not static.
Yeah.
And so I assume he quit after that. I never got any more emails back and forth about chemistry.
Oh, no.
But you going in early, although it wasn't your responsibility, it's in anticipation of water's always changing. I don't know who swam last night. I don't know if the chemical feeding drum was low. I don't know if the power was out and it didn't go back on until 3 hours ago. But it was stagnant for 6 hours. Yeah. Right? There's so many aspects to it. And I think the other thing with the CPO course that's nice is I'm able to touch on all of my experience, both as a guard, as a facility manager, as an operator, and just say there's more to it. Yeah. If you just think it's a pool that you turn on and off and you fill, then you're going to be surprised. When 100%. You consider the cleaning regiment, the scheduling shutdown, scheduling staff, opening early, closing late, all of those things, then it becomes, oh, it's actually a real job. It's actually a real business, right? That's why it's taking so much of my time. And that's how I explain to my manager, if I'm a hotel maintenance guy, it's taking a lot of my time.
100%. I agree. So we've been talking a lot about mentorship. Do you have a mentor?
I've had so many mentors over the years. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I stand on the shoulders of everybody who came before me. I have had some great mentors in different areas. I can't identify one specific one because I've received mentoring at all levels. I'm very privileged to have also come up through a camp system. So I attended an outdoor sleepaway camp for many, many years, then became a leader in training, counselor in training.
Mm-hmm.
And they, like Aquatics, in parallel, were really big on reinvesting in staff and mentoring us and really allowing us to grow.
Right.
So I think that's a huge piece that I like about my company, Lakeview Aquatic Consultants, is I'm able to give that back. And as my husband will tell you, I don't charge enough for that because a lot of it is, Katie, we're at dinner, stop texting. Well, this person is having this problem. Have they ever paid you? Well, no, but that's not why I'm here. Right? I want them to leave with the knowledge, the education, whether it's water safety, drowning prevention, whether that's chemistry. And so I feel that in recognition of all the mentors that I've had, then I like to mentor people back, whether that's in my classes, whether that's through Instagram or Facebook randoms. So I got an email a couple weeks ago from someone, no idea how she found me. She doesn't remember how she found me. We haven't met, but she's having some challenges. And I mean, I would rather people come to me, and if I can't help them, I will let them know.
Yeah.
But there is an absence of people doing what I do, and they wouldn't be coming to me if there was a surplus of people doing it.
Of course, yeah. And aquatics people don't do it for the money. For the most part, like there's not a whole ton of money in what we do. We do it because we love it and we're passionate about it.
Yes.
You just briefly touched on a subject that I wanted to talk about because that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Water safety and drowning prevention.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk to you about that, and then it could have been half an hour ago now. I don't know. But you mentioned also swimming lessons as a priority.
Yes.
Because a lot of parents put hockey schedules, soccer schedules, ballet, oh, we're too busy, we can't do swimming this session.
Correct.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yes. So swimming lessons are a life skill, right? Hockey is not a life skill as much as in Canada we might say it is. Right? I am not going to die because I cannot play hockey, right? As you know, and you've mentioned in other podcasts, right? We have so many lakes in Canada. We have so much of a water culture. Yeah. That is why our new Canadians are drowning, because they want the full Canadian experience. They want to go canoeing. They want to go swimming. They want to go sit at the beach and barbecue, right? That is one of the challenges and the responsibilities that we have with a huge coastline, with all these water sources. And I don't know what the solution is, because certainly I think it would be great if we had swim lessons as part of a primary education curriculum.
Oh, me too.
I would
That's
love,
the dream.
You know what I mean? There's so many things that we could do. There's no one answer. Yeah. I think it's a mix of access. Even somewhere like Ontario as a province, right? The number of pools is not necessarily keeping pace with the population growth. You talk about affordability, right? Yeah. The cost of swim lessons in certain areas is high. In other areas it may be subsidized, but then you can't get in because there's wait lists. The capacity isn't there. So I don't know what the solutions are, other than to keep having this conversation. People like you having podcasts, Rick Kaufman's podcast, us as leaders, lifeguards. And then I'm also unfortunately the one who will poke the bear. So I am not afraid to say, hey, this happened maybe 6 years ago. I didn't realize what I was doing until after the fallout. Right. But I'm that person on Facebook that's asking where Joey's life jacket is, right? If you're showing a picture of you boating and people are drinking alcohol and you're holding your 2-year-old and they're not in a life jacket, it doesn't matter that there's no intention that he's going to go swimming, right? I'm going to be that person and say, hey, you know, that's not okay. Yeah. Right? No. Or even another post a few years later, that life jacket is for children 20 to 30 pounds, you have an infant. We do make infant life jackets. Yeah. Here's a link. I'm not judging you. It's just that information, people assume that information exists. And my husband is not a pool person at all. And maybe 6 months ago, we had a breakthrough. I've been in aquatics for 18 years. Right. Been married for 9 years. We had a breakthrough 6 or 7 months ago. He came to me in the kitchen and he said, did you know that drowning is a leading cause of death in children under the age of 10? And I said, yes. Typically kids under the age of 7, and it's the leading preventable cause of death. Let's forget about, things like measles and And he said, I had no idea. And I said, that's because you come from a place of privilege that you know how to swim. Right? Yeah. I know how to swim. we go boating, we go on vacation, we don't worry about swimming.
Right.
Right? Our culture or our families prioritize learning how to swim. We can be grateful for that. But I have many friends whose parents didn't know how to swim, so they didn't know how to swim. Or they just were going to stay away from water, or they came from places where swimming wasn't affordable or accessible. So it's just keeping it at the forefront of the conversation. And so as much as I don't know necessarily how much Lakeview, we don't run private swim lessons, you know, we don't do water safety education, we do have an initiative coming up next month that'll be announced that is in support of things like this.
Good.
But it's just keeping that conversation going. And so with Instagram and the Facebook page that I have for Lakeview Aquatic Consultants, every once in a while, as much as I would love to have drowning prevention all day long, I do try and keep it in that conversation, because I do have a lot of operators, I do have a lot of mechanical people that don't have that lifeguarding background. So talking about ratios, how many kids can you take to the pool? What are those high-risk ages? What does within arm's reach mean? What is active supervision? How do we prevent entrapment, right? In bathtubs and drains, things like that. And so it's really just connecting the dots. The other piece that I have found is that the mechanical side of the pool industry, especially coming out of the United States, they don't see themselves as responsible for drowning prevention.
Right.
And they, I mean, the builders and the installers of swimming pools, especially residentially, they see talking about drowning as a buzzkill when it comes to selling swimming pools, as opposed to other places like Australia, where the fencing and the glass industry works in part with the pool industry to say, hey, you want to build pools, we don't want kids to drown, let's team up and work together.
Yes.
In North America, it seems to be very either you build a pretty pool or you build a safe pool. And I think that conversation is completely wrong. They can be both.
I definitely think people sell fun more than they sell safety.
Correct.
And honestly, working at a survival first swim school, I think that message is so wrong. If you ask anyone at a municipality or anyone anywhere, why are your kids in swimming? It's not because they want them to have fun. Yes, that's a part of it. But it's because they want them to be safe around the water. Maybe they didn't learn how to swim. Maybe they have a cottage. Maybe whatever the reason. So why aren't we selling safety first?
No, and I think that's a valid point that's being missed. We, in the industry in general for swimming lessons, I can say this now as a for-profit business versus municipal, where we didn't necessarily have, you know, solid revenue targets. There are many parts of our industry that are complacent when it comes to marketing that could be more active, and it would solve some of our other challenges.
100%.
Many pools don't have enough capacity, so they're not actively advertising swimming lessons because they can't create any more spaces.
Right.
But when it comes to, well, why should you take swimming lessons versus ballet, or instead of hockey for another session, right? It's saying you need to learn how to swim. Your kids need to learn how to swim. And do you feel confident? Yes, you supervise them at the lake. Yes, you supervise them at grandma's hot tub. But what if they go to a sleepover or a play date? A lot of these drownings, as you know, occur when they're outside of your supervision. You don't have control anymore of that situation. Do you feel confident that your child could swim 5 meters or roll over or reach the wall or self-orient?
100%.
People don't think about that. They just think, oh, well, he got the badge. I want him to swim 15 meters so that he can go to camp and do this. We're not worried about actual functional life skills or long-term enjoyment. And it's definitely a piece that's missing, and we're not advertising the way we could be.
I agree. I 100% agree. I think selling safety should be the number one priority rather than selling fun and recreation. Wow, we've been speaking for almost an hour and a half. So, last question before we go. If you were to give 1 to 3 pieces of advice to an aquatics professional who wants this to be their career, their life, what would you give?
I prepared for the other question. This is not the question. 3 pieces of advice. Okay, so I should start by saying I'm only 33, so I haven't got it all figured out.
Right.
The first piece of advice that comes to mind is a little bit odd, but you need to be you and own what you want to do.
Right.
So I am very certain now as a person about who I am and what I do, and that's, so it's easy now for me to say that. But if I think back to when I was in second or third year university and I was studying something that I loved that has nothing to do with aquatics,
Right.
didn't have a life plan,
Yeah.
and I briefly thought about switching to either nursing or aquatics as a career, and I mentioned it to a family member and I got the look of death.
Yeah.
Like, aquatics is not a real job. Pools are not real jobs. That probably set me back a number of years that I can't get back.
Mm-hmm.
When if I had just moved in the direction that I wanted to go in, we would be, not that I'm not far ahead, but I would be further ahead than I am today.
Right.
It's the same way, too, sometimes we dishonor the... It's the same way, too, sometimes we don't take seriously the opinions of a 17 or 18 or 19-year-old who has very thoughtfully considered what they want to do, whether a trade or an education or a career change. Oh, you'll grow out of it. Oh, you don't know. And we disavow what they've really thought through.
Right.
So I guess my first piece of advice would be just to own what you want to do, commit, do it, and if it doesn't work out, well, you just have to do something else.
Adapt, yeah.
Right? So even with my job, I tell people, I've been doing this full time now for almost 20 months, and if it doesn't work out, if I can't pay my bills, I'll get a different job.
Right.
It's not the end of the world. They say we're going to have 10 jobs in our life, as a millennial.
Yeah, they do.
Right? So it is what it is. Second piece of advice is to be humble, because a lot of people think that they've put in the time, that they are owed something, and they are owed nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So I met you today, Paige. We haven't worked together before. You don't know necessarily anything about me. I shouldn't come in with some sort of chip on my shoulder privilege. Well, I have all of this experience.
Right.
Right? Be humble. I'm learning from you. I'm learning from this process. I'm learning from every client, every facility, every class I teach. Every single day should be new and fresh, and if it's not, then I'm not doing my job right.
Right.
Right? So be humble, and don't come from a place where you're the bee's knees and, well, I teach NL this way, and therefore that's the best way to do it.
Right.
There is no best, right? There is what is right for the client, the circumstance, the situation,
right.
all of that. So be humble.
Awesome.
And then I think the third thing would just be ask questions. So I'm a kinesthetic learner. It drives people crazy. I have to burn my hand on the hot stove to know that it's hot, right? But that's just who I am. I'm kinesthetic.
Right.
It doesn't stick until I've burned my hand.
Yeah.
So I often ask questions, and I've had managers who felt that I was being impertinent. Well, why are we vacuuming the pool every day for 15 minutes when we could vacuum it every second day for 30 minutes or every third day for 1 hour?
Right.
Why do we do this? And that often leads to, well, that's the way we've always done it, which they don't appreciate saying, but even as they're saying, they know that we need to bring a fresh perspective.
Of course.
So I think if you're willing to ask questions and do the work that comes out of it, you'll grow that much faster as a person than just, if you've ever heard the term assumption, right? If you make an assumption, you're making an ass out of you and me, right? You never know what kind of misunderstandings, safety, like dangerous safety-wise, in terms of assessing a kid's ability. Oh, they passed Swim Kids 1, therefore we're good to start our swim lesson in the deep end today for Swim Kids 2. Do not assume anything. Yeah. Ask questions, and I think you'll go far.
Awesome. And is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Just thank you for the opportunity. It was great to have a dialogue with somebody who is very passionate about advancing water safety and really connecting the industry. I think we have a lot of silos, even nationally and provincially, in aquatics, and so the lifeguards need to talk to the managers, who need to talk to the trainers and the affiliates, and really connecting the pieces for the people that want to be connected. And then those people who don't want to be connected, the industry will just keep moving past.
Exactly. I want to thank you so much for coming on. I could speak to you all day, but we both have other things to do. Last thing before you go, where can people connect with you if they want to, if they felt inspired by this episode?
Yeah, so my name is Katie Crysdale. My business is called Lakeview Aquatic Consultants Limited. I'm based in Alberta near Calgary, but I do travel across Canada to teach. So you can find us on our website, which is LakeviewAquaticConsultants.com. I'm also pretty active on Instagram. It's Lakeview Aquatic Consultants, missing an A at the end, but there's not a lot of accounts that are very similar. We also have an email list and a Facebook page, and would love to hear from anyone that felt that they got anything from this episode. And I just love visiting pools and meeting other pool people.
Awesome.
And I plan to continue doing that until I'm sick of it, right? Which is hopefully not anytime soon.
Awesome. I will post that all in the show notes. And again, thank you for coming on.
So I really hope you gained something from this episode. I definitely did, and I'm so inspired and have gotten a lot of good tips and tricks from Katie. We did record this episode before COVID-19 was happening. So I just want to update you on everything that Katie is actually doing for the industry, because we are now practicing social distancing, physical distancing, and we are not at work anymore. So she has free webinars going on from now until I believe the beginning of April or mid-April, and talking to other industry professionals and giving us some valuable content to deal with this pandemic happening. So her webinars are called the Pool Aid webinars, and you can find them if you go to her Facebook page or her website, which will be posted in the show notes below. So again, thank you for listening. Please take advantage and take everything you've learned from this episode and put it into action at your own facilities, and go check out those webinars. I've already been to 2, and they are so useful for you and your teams.